Starfall guide or tutorial, however you want to call this. I'm going to be teaching on many things upon Starfall, mainly on the important things that you will need to know and you will use like about all the time. And this is dedicated to those who want to start with Starfall but just couldn't find anything that could teach them on it, nor did they want to go through the Gmod wiki or any of other stuff. Anyways, let's begin. That's Eric. That's a bot. He's gonna be helping us. Anyways, I assume you had Starfall. So, down here, you see the Starfall processor, which is the exact thing that you'll be working with all the time, especially here. Now, when you open it, of course, it's similar to E2. If you've ever done E2 or seen what E2 looks like, this is just about the same. Just get rid of that and space a couple of times. Now, let me explain these. Just like E2, there was a name. It had persist, all that other stuff. This is different. This is the name of the chip. Say like chip 3, 2, 4, 5. Yeah. Any name works. See the chip's name there, author. Put your name on that. Show up as the author of the chip. This is perfect for giving credit for any other people that helped you in the making of the chip. So we could say me and Eric. She's in the dark room. Now this is important to know. Now, if we go to the SF helper or the Starfall docs and go down to directives, you'll see that there's share. Set the current file to run on both server and client. Now this may sound complicated. Well, let me tell you on what server and client do. The server is handling basically everything happening around you. It's controlling how props work and stuff. That guy is, well, of course, a bot running entirely on the server install. Thrusters are used on the server. That's how you get this light force. Anything that has to be done, like, you know, physics, anything is done on the server. Client, however, some things you can only run, like, you can only load these on the client. Server can't do that. Only this can run on the client, because the server cannot create files on the client. Which leads me to say that these colors mean something. Orange is the client, blue and orange is server and client, and well, fully blue is server. Meaning that only whatever is specified can use this. For example, this constraint library thing, you can only do this on the server. So if I were to try to run this on the client, which you can change this to client or server, or keep it shared. I'll keep it shared. Uh-oh, sorry, I'm pressing random buttons. Well, so much for keeping it shared. But anyways, if I were to run this on the client, it wouldn't work at all. Likewise for server using client stuff, it just won't work. So that's the very basics of this. And just like every tutorial does, you know, that is not the shift bar. You got the classic print. It prints. Very simple. The color even changes depending on where you put it. Server, client. Client. Very basic. Well, we'll jump into the good stuff. Now that you know and are familiar with the menu and the Starfall docs, because it's the document, basically the whole library of this thing. All the functions you need to know for this are in here. But let's talk about the important things. If you are from E2 and stuff, you can remember vectors. Vectors structure. See, you can think of it as world coordinates or so. It always goes by X, Y, and Z. Always X, Y, and Z. Angles are... Let me find my stuff. Pitch, yaw, roll. It's always going to be like that. Now, strings are, well, strings. They're text. Mainly text. Only text. Strings are pretty fun. Then you got colors, which is one of the structures. It always goes by R, G, and B. Very easy to remember, that's for sure. And then bools, or booleans, it's the true or false statements. Of course, you can't put them alone like this. We'll talk more what you're supposed to do with those. Now, nil is, well, nothing. It's non-existent. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Those were some of the basic things. All four of those are pretty basic. Mainly three of these are going to be the things you use a lot. Color, you can use, depending on what you're trying to do. Well, let's talk about variables. See, if I do A equals, let's say, 10. This represents this. So let's say if I print A, there we go. Remember to properly get your capitalization like that. Because if I just did that...
No fiddlesticks. What now?
Oh yeah, it's just gonna error.
No fiddlesticks. What now?
Crap.
No fiddlesticks. What now?
Seems to be a problem. Okay, so I had a bit of a mess up. Don't mind that. I won't say what happened, but as you can see, now it will print 10, because A is, well, representing 10. Or, we could print a vector. Let's say 1, 1. It'll print 1, 1, 1. Very simple. Now, this is global. What does that mean? It means this can be called anywhere in this script. Let me clarify. So let's say if I put this in a timer. Despite it being in here, it'll still be called out here, but it won't be called because this is going to be called before that. It's going to error. Yeah. But if I make this local, and then do a timer for this, 2 seconds later, watch what happens. It prints nil. Why? That's because when this was called, it can only exist in this block. See? So if I put this in here again, it prints the vector. Local variables are generally faster to get than global, which is why you always want to try and make all your variables local, And if this is being called somewhere else and I have to use this wherever I'm trying to call it, then I can just remove this and that'll be fine. It's good practice to just make your variables local, even if it's a simple script like this. It's just good practice and a good habit to get into. So let's create a hologram from all this. First, go into the helper, look for holograms, or you can search it up. Holograms, there you go. Holograms create. Now you get all of this stuff. Holograms create. Parameters, vector, angle, string, and another vector. You're familiar with all three of these, so copy it. Now, you can get positions of any object, so let's get position of an entity. Let's say the chip, because the chip is, well, the chip. So if you do chip get pose, or get position, you'll get the position of this chip. An angle, we can set it to however we want. We can set it to just be nothing, or let's say 0, 40 degrees, 0. And then the model, which means you can just grab a model from here. Let's get this barrel. It's a barrel. And then you can scale it. Now, what this means, vector or nil, this is optional. So you can just get rid of that and not bother with it, and it will work. See? Now this is yaw, so if we put 50 degrees on the pitch, it'll angle at 50 degrees on its pitch. But this is simple, very simple. And it's just the first steps into getting into more complex things, which is the fun part. Well, let's go back to this vector here that we got rid of. We can scale it, say 1, 2, 1, 1. Now it's scaled like this. You can do some really, really wacky stuff. Like this. Very, very wacky things you can do. That's the whole fun of Starfall. Mess around and find out what happens. But after that, remember the booleans? Well, let me teach on how those work. So let's say A is equal true. Now let's go to if statements. These are very simple. Everyone knows what an if statement is. If you don't, well, that's fine. So let's say if A double equal, which means if it's equal to this, then end. If A is true, then, well, print true. It's true. Very helpful, Eric. Now, if we turn this to false, however, it didn't print anything. That's because it's not equal to this. Or, you can do this. This means if it's not true, not equal to true, then run that code. There's lots of things you can do with this, and there's Glua operators and stuff. Generally, you want to look up Glua operators and go to whatever search engine you use and see what kind of operators there are. Of course. You also have your if A is less than that, it's gonna trigger. If it's more than, let's say, 8, then trigger. Very simple. Very simple compare stuff. And one cool thing. Let's do print. Let's do a little string thing. Say hi, or even better, the classic hello world. See, we could put both hello world into here. But what if you did this? What this does, it combines these two into one string. So if we play this, it's gonna combine it into a full string like that. It's very cool. I certainly have recently used that to my advantage. But now let's move on to tables. Now let's talk about tables. You can think of tables as like a list of things, you know. This is a table. You can tell by these brackets. You can put physically anything you want in a table. So let's say if we put I, comma, you have to put a comma after every value or whatever you want to call it. Or else it's just gonna say it's gonna do this. It's gonna error on you. So hi, let's do E, which is funny, and A. So this cool, we have a table. We can even print this table. Let's do print table. A table. Let's print it. And it orderly prints it out. 1 equals I, 2 equal E, and 3 equal A. Just like how they're set. This is first, second, this is third. Well, let's get deep into this. This is a key. Meaning this holds this value, which is, in this case, I. 2 is the key of this value. 3 is the key of this value. It's key values. Well, let's say if you want to individually access these, we can do print table. And if we put these, let's say if we know the key, get back on check. If we know the key of these values, then we can take that key and manually put it here. Let's say I want to get E, so let's put 2. I'll get E. Or maybe if I want high, I'll put a 1, because 1 is high's key, and 3 will be A's key. Very simple to get the values out of the table individually. But it's very important that you should also know for loops. So let's find a function here. Let's get all players. In this case, it will just be me and Eric here, who is again a bot. Let's define this as a variable. Local, let's say class. No, that's fine. Equals this. We don't need a filter. We'll talk about that sometime else. Now, for loops. You can loop over a table through its keys and values. So we could do for k/v. I always say slash over comma because I like saying it like that. In. Now here's a function, pairs. If we look up pairs, you can see what it does. Returns an iterator function for a for loop that will return the values of this specified table in arbitrary order. So let's put the table in this. Do end. So what this is going to do is go through all the players. So we could do print the key. Go print all the keys. Or we can print, excuse the background. We can print all the values which those keys hold. This is perfect for looping over all the keys slash values and all the players. Let's say if V is owner, which in this case is me. I messed this up somehow. Oh, sorry. Get owner. Now, hold up. Hang on, sorry. If V equals owner, then print V, because that'll be the value. So, what this should do is, if the player is me, then it should print me. And it print me. If it's not me, let's say, it'll print the others. Anyone that is not me. In this case, Eric. For loops is very cool. Let me say that. There's another way to do that. You could do for I equals 1. Class. Do. There you go. Now let me explain what this is going to do. First, let's go to this. What does this mean? This means it will get the length of the table, like how many entries there is in the table. This can also tell you the length of a string in numbers. So I'll just comment all this out for now, so I can demonstrate this. So if I had this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. Now if I put this behind that, it'll print 5, because that's the whole length of the string. There's what the hashtag does for you. Let's go back to this. So this is best used for making multiple things. Let's say hollows. If you do a... I'll be back as soon as I finish coding this. Here I have made a basic example of using this. I is going to start from 1, and it's going to loop up until it hits 10, which means it's going to constantly run this until it hits this number. Now I have made this hollow as a table, and I put this as, well, this, let me find my words real quick. Each number is going to make a hollow of its own name. So 1, it's going to make its own hollow 1, and it's going to keep on going until it goes 10. So I can access these individual hollows by getting their, well, number. Which, if I get the 10th hollow, I could change it into, let's say, a very tall milk carton, as this model is. But let's spawn this. Actually, before I do, what I'm about to do is I'm gonna get the chip's position plus on the x-axis, or like whatever you want to say it. I'm gonna multiply it by the current number, which means it's gonna keep pushing a hollow and creating it until it stops. See? This is first hollow, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10, and you get it. Again, you can directly access these hollows if you put a number here, or let's say hollow 10. Let's make it red.
No fiddlesticks. What now?
Oops, hang on. Alright, sorry about that. I forgot that you have to... My mistake there is I called this before the 10th hollow was created, which does not work. So all I did was do if I equals 10, which means at this point this hollow should have been made. Then it should make the 10th hollow red. And it's red. That, my friend, is stables. Pretty fun to work with, if I do say myself. If I do say so myself, if I can find my words. It's alright. But this one thing with tables you can do now. For all those wire mod people, this is your time. Let's go to the wire library and play with this stuff. We can do all of this stuff. We can adjust inputs. We can adjust outputs, all this stuff. And just like calling directly, calling direct values and keys, well, mainly keys, you can't do that, values. Let me do a little demonstration. Fortunately, I do not have wire mod enabled for this, which is a dumb idea because you're actually supposed to have wire mod if you have Starfall. But that's a mistake on my part. I can get to that another time. But while we're here, let's talk about while stuff. What this is gonna do, let's create something real quick. Now, while B is true, capitalize it, remember your variables, do, and what this is going to do, it's going to continuously run and run while this is true. So let's print E, and this is going to get wild. Yeah, this generally happens whenever you do this, which is why wild.
Oh, fiddlesticks. What now?
This So you can see what while loops do. They will forever, ever run and will never stop. You can see it. The chat is still trying to keep up with it. That's what this does. This is very dangerous if you do not know what you're doing. Don't worry, I'm a professional at this. I totally know what I'm doing. Anyways, let's do B equals 1. Let's do while B is not equal to, let's do 10, because if we go way farther, this is gonna lag my game a lot harder. Now we're gonna do B equals B, which is gonna call itself plus 1. So it's gonna add 1 to itself. So what's gonna do is, while B is not 10, it's gonna run this until it is 10. Hang on a second. Excuse me for my big brain. I was wondering why it wasn't working because I did not print anything. So let me get back to what we were talking about. Now, while this is at 10, it's gonna continuously add up until it hits 10. There you go. Or you could do something else. Let's say we have A here, so if alright, no, this ain't important. I'm getting sidetracked. So let's say if B is 5, then this is the one thing you can stop a while. Break. I forgot the print. You see, it stopped at 5 because I told it to break, which means, you know, break this loop and stop. So that's how you can stop a while loop while it's constantly looping. So again, be careful with this if you do not know what you're doing with it and stuff, or whatever you're trying to do with it, because this can this is pretty wild. Well, let's move on from all of this. We're gonna learn about hooks. This should be fun. Now, what is a hook, you may ask? A hook is like an event that happened. Let's see, if I type something that called a hook, and I'll tell you what hook I called from that. Let's go back into the docs. Let's go down to hooks. These are all the hooks that you have at your disposal. So what did I call? Well, I called the player save, called when a player sends a chat message. Or I also called player chat, which is a client thing, I'm pretty sure. Player chat, where did it go? Player chat. Called when a player's chat message is printed to the chat window. And, well, that also got called because it got printed into the chat window. Oh, I didn't know that shows my avatar. Okay. You learn things every day, that's for sure. Anyways. Now, how do we use these hooks? You certainly can't copy and paste them into here because, well, it doesn't light up or anything. It looks like a variable. You want to go to the libraries again and go under hook. There's some options you can do with hooks. You can add one, you can remove one, you can run one and return the result, or you can remotely run one between different chips, which is useful for basically networking things between chips and stuff. That's its own whack thing. Something I need to get my head over as well, but I didn't have any projects that need that. Anyways, back on track. Let's copy the hook.add, and now hook name. Going back down here, the hooks, these are all hook names. So let's go back to the player say. Player say, let's copy the name, player say, and let's put this in the string, player say. And then this is just a custom name. You can name it whatever you want. That is used for removing the hook whenever you want to remove it. So let's just name it say. Now here, what do you do with this? What is this? This is a function. So what you want to do is just have that. Now here, as you can see, apply text team chat. So let me just put these in the function for demonstration. Apply is the player, string is the text that was said, and a true or false if it was set in team chat. Now, let's go down, input N. It's mad at me. Why is that? It's because this hook needs to end. So, bam. Problem solved. So, let's print all three of these. Print, apply, comma, text, another comma, team, chat. Now, what you can guess from this, it will print the player. The text I'll send in team chat, if it will send in team chat. See, nothing has happened until it's a bit. There we go. It's a little weird. Okay, whatever. You see, it printed the player, aka me, in this case. What I said, and if it was said in team chat. So if I say this in team chat, it's gonna come back true this time. Really, hooks are something that you can use a lot. They're really fun to play with, depending on what you're doing and stuff. There's all sorts of things you can do to mess around with. You can play your depth. There's some things you can do with this that's pretty fun. All sorts of things. It's all limited by what you're trying to do. Hang on. Find my way. Okay, we're back, and this time I'm running this on a client with a hook. Now, some hooks allow you to return things to them. Meaning, this here, let's go to this, called when the engine wants to calculate the player's view. Only works if connected to a Starfall HUD. Which in this case, we need to enable HUD. What the heck do you do here? Well, let's search it up to see what do you have to do to make it work. The player, and if it's true or false, if it's active. So, owner. True. Which this will enable the HUD for me. Now, let's go to the help view. Returns. You have to return a table containing all of this. So let's make a table. Local view equals nice. Let me skip ahead real quick. Here we are with the calc view hook again. I have made a table of the things listed here. Of course, I took the names. So origin is gonna be the original pose, and is gonna be the original, yada yada. So let's see if I want to change the Z far clip plane to 1000. Now, if we return view. You can see the C clip plane is a lot closer now. We can even do some more tomfoolery if we do angle. It's 90. In this case, it didn't work. That's fine. But you can move your position and all that stuff, your FOV. It's literally just like you can make third person or whatever. In E2, you'd use the view, or wire mod, you use the view controller and stuff to set your view, which that entire thing uses this hook. So you can do the same with this. For any type of vehicle or whatever you want to do with it. It's all up to what you want to do. that's the basics of these kinds of hooks that allow you to return things to them. Well, let's move on to functions. We'll go to server now. You can create, functions, you know, these are all functions. This is a function and stuff, but there's custom functions you can make. Now, you can create a function by, you can also define it to be local, or you can not have it as local. We'll have it as local. Function, and then space, whatever you name. Let's say, let's do test, and then put 2 parentheses, end. Now here, let's say, these will be the parameters for this. Let's say, if I were to make this, let's make this name color and stuff. Any color value, or any value I put in here, will be used as that. Basically, you can make custom libraries, which is what these are.
Oh, fiddlesticks. What now?
Don't mind that. That was some weird stuff I somehow managed to do. This is one of Sparky's libs, or libraries. You can see here, he's got parameters like this. Any values you put in here as their respective value, as you're supposed to. It's, sorry if I'm not making sense here. It's literally just like this, but it's your own custom function. So you can just make your custom functions either to be something to easily get in your script, or to make a library to make other scripts easier. Very useful if you want to make a whole library containing some scripts that allow you to do things that you don't have to do manually all over again, or copy and paste. Which, if you'd want to include a library, look back down to Directives, include, and then you can mark a file, which, for example, we'd mark that. There's an example for this. Include, let's see, include that. Include. Normally, this will be your file path to the script. That's the word. Thank you. But it's like E2. Again, this is similar to E2. Let's move on towards client stuff. So let's talk about running things on the client now. Let's go into here. We have base, which you can load a sound from a URL. You can do render, which this thing is a whole lot of fun. Basically means you can create your own HUD. You can render things on a screen, which is used from Starfall components. Screen. This is a screen. You can render things on this. Even 3D things, so like something can appear 3-dimensional in there and look really trippy. That's like the coolest thing I've ever seen before. The HUD stuff's fun. All sorts of things you can do on the client. Right here, that's just notes of music stuff that I've been playing around with. Now, normally if you're in the server, any server, you can run things for yourself and no one else will see it. So you can do if player. This is, if you look up player, same as owner on the server. On the client, it returns the local player, which means the individual player. Which means if I say if this equals to me, then, and this will, anything in here will only run for me, just me. So only I will see it or hear it, whatever I do. No one else will, unless I get rid of that. Well, let's get base. Load URL. If I can grab it, thank you. Base, load URL. Here's our path. That's a comment, by the way. The URL. The flags. So there's many types of flags, actually. I forget where it is. Hang on. Yeah. Remember to look at the parameters. Sometimes they'll show you what you can put in there. So there we go. Please excuse my big brain function. And now I'm gonna put. This will get 3 arguments, which means the sound object, the error number, and the name of said error. So let's only get the sound. So let's do sound play. Which if we go to types, base, play, which starts to play the sound. So this will play this sound, which is this entire thing. So let's walk away from the engineer a bit. Theoretically, this should play. Hang on a second, I messed up again. Dang it! So I just realized I did not mess up. It's working. The music is playing. I just forgot to set the position. We'll get the position of now. There you go. It is playing the music that I had specified through this URL. There's many things you can do with this. With the types and stuff. Get FFT. You visualize the sound stuff. All sorts of cool things with bass. It's very fun. Set the fade in, fade out,
and why does my appearance seem
bass.
to have a somber tone?
Let's stop the music now. Let's go down to render now. How do you run or draw things on your screen? Let's do a draw HUD. For any HUD stuff, you need to go down the hooks and find the draw HUD hook. Or preferably search it up. Called when a frame is requested to be drawn on HUD. This has no parameters, so you don't need to put anything in here. Now, if we put any render stuff right in here, this will be rendered on our screen, basically, or HUD. So let's go to the render library. There's a whole lot of things you can do here. All we want is a... what do we want? let's draw a rectangle. Now, this stuff is a little funky. I'll tell you why. So let's have it on, we'll go 30Y, 20 pixels wide, and 10 height. You see the top left, that it's up there. That's the basics of this. We can set the color of this too. So let's get set color. Now, this is a little weird because you cannot make these variables and do stuff on them. So what you do is, if I want to set this to like blue, I have to put this above it so it's defined on what the color is supposed to be. So 0, 0, 255. Now it will be blue. What if I want to make another that's like, I don't know, 1000 out? There we go. But it's blue. What if I want that to be red? We do the same by placing that above this, making it red. See? Because this won't affect up here, because, you know, code works by going top to bottom. So this will run and change this color. This will run and change this color. Pretty basic. And the screens, like I showed earlier, these screens work basically the same. You could just put it on this screen instead, and its XY coordinates stuff. The client stuff allows you to like bring anything you imagine into reality here. You can even, there's mesh stuff, you can import models, really, basically. Create from OBJ. Get a material, create a light. There's all sorts of fun things you can do with the, and I've seen a lot of cool screen visualizers stuff. You've probably seen them on YouTube as well, with other people making these FFT screen visualizers or hollow visualizers, all made purely on the client. Very cool stuff. Now, let's move on. So let's talk about net messages. Net messages is the base of communication between server and the client. Meaning the server can talk to the client and the client can talk to the server. All starts in this library, used for sending data from the server to the client and back. So there's read stuff, write, data, entity, float, integer, all this stuff. But let's say, how do I get this host position from the client? Because I obviously can't get the hollow position from here. So how do I send this down to here? Well, first let's find net.start. So let's start a net message from server. Let's give it the name of hollow. Now, hollow is an entity, so we want to write the entity. Let's put the hollow in here. Now, all we have to do is send a net message. You don't really have to worry about this if you're just sending something, but depending on what you're doing, again, it's totally up to you. So we can just completely get rid of this. Now this will send a net message down to the client, but how do we read it? So net.receive, if we put this down here, because this is where we're sending it, now we gotta match the name that started from here. So hollow function. Okay, we have the net.receive, so if it receives any net message, it will run anything here. So let's read the entity that we have previously sent and written from up here. So now this is a callback or function. This will fire when this entity becomes valid for you. In some cases you need it, in some cases you don't. It depends what you're doing. Again. So now that I have the hollow, I want to put a light on it. So it's to the light library. Light create. Let's put it here. Local light equals. Capitalize it. Vector. Alright, well let's get the hollow's position. Size, we can make it 512. Brightness 2. Color. Oh, stop it. We can make this a sort of a orangish color. Now, let's draw the light with a hook. Oh, hang on a second. I forgot the hook. Ah, yes, I was being a big brain again. So, I forgot to mention before, tick. It's called on each game tick. Think is both called on tick and frame on the client. Normally you don't use think on the server or anything. I just usually use tick. Tick. I like it better. Now, hook. Got it. Tick. It doesn't matter if you capitalize it or not. We'll name it drop. Now let's go to the types. Go down to light. We got all these options, but what we want is to draw it. So we'll take this. Light. Draw. Now, if this works, let's go into a dark area and not switch our thing.
No fiddlesticks. What now? No fiddlesticks. No what fiddlesticks. Now? What now?
Oops, hang on. Let's try that. There you go. Sometimes you need, for any net message that starts as soon as the chip spawn, you need to make a timer that's like a sort of a delay before it sends, because if we send it before this is even mentioned, it's gonna go nowhere, and therefore it's gonna error. So keep that in mind. You gotta put a delay if it's gonna start right off the bat, just like how I did it here. But as you can see, if we move this a bit farther out, it gets the position of this hollow, which we recently sent to the client, aka myself, and it's drawing a light on it. Very cool. That's the basic communication between client, server to client, client to server, vice versa, however you want to do it. Which leads, you can do all sorts of things now that you can communicate from the server to client or client to server, sending data back and forth. But this is all I have for today. And this might be the only thing I make. But thank you for listening in and watching throughout this whole 40 minutes or so. Very long process that we've just gone through, but hopefully this has helped you to understand what the heck Starfall is and how to do it, because you don't see any tutorials out there talking about Starfall. cuff. Now all you really need to do is just play around. Just make fun things. Play with the hooks or so. Play with fun things, maybe player diff, all this stuff. No clip, player part. All sorts of things you can do. Just think on what you want to do and try and code it. Always start small though. Basically what I'm saying is just take it easy and simple. Because the better you get, the more complicated you can get and stuff. It all takes practice, and by practicing, it is by creating scripts and playing. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you.